Do you ever have a dream that starts off promising and then it just suddenly goes bad? What do? Well, the other night I had a dream. I was hanging out with a minor celebrity, someone known for making bad decisions and poor choices. And they suddenly said to me, "Hey, Eric, let's go rock climbing." Now, I'm really scared of heights, and amazingly, for some reason in the dream, maybe I didn't want to disappoint this famous person, have them think I'm some kind of mama's boy, preacher, wimp type, but I said, yeah, sure, I'll go rock climbing. So we got close to the top of where we were going to go, and this minor celebrity, I don't want to say who, suddenly fell. And I watched him plunge hundreds of feet to the earth and saw his body splash against the hard ground like a watermelon. And so I myself suddenly realized, oh my gosh, I'm in a desperate circumstance. And so I tried to make my way down the face of the cliff, shinning really carefully as I went, but I was filled with this overwhelming terror, and I came to a place where there was nowhere left to go. I couldn't go up, I couldn't go sideways, I couldn't go right, left. The only thing I could do was join my minor celebrity friend down at the bottom. So what did I do? Well, I did the only thing that I could. I woke up. That is the great advantage of facing danger or facing problems or pain in a dream. It isn't real, and we can just wake up from it. If we know we're in a dream, that is. But what happens if our pain, what happens if our problems, what happens if the danger is not a product of our unconscious mind? Can we just wake up? Now, this, of course, is the desperate circumstance in which Paul teaches that we all find ourselves, at least at one time, if we are honest. Paul wrote to the church at Ephesus, "You were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air." Now, we may hear this and say, "Dead? Golly, isn't that a little drastic? Dead? I mean, isn't that overstating the case a little bit? I mean, I agree. I have problems. I understand that life is far from perfect, but dead? Really? Honestly? Well, we are dead. We are dead in our trespasses and sins, meaning that we have no way to escape them, meaning that we are stuck. We can't go to the right. We can't go to the left. We can't go up. All we can do is tumble down. We're something like the Walking Dead. And for some of us, this condition is self-evident. It's self-evident. We came in here this morning, like me in my dream, knowing, gosh, I'm stuck. I'm looking for a way out. I am craving new life. I'm seeking hope. You're very ready to hear what happens next. But that's not all of us. Now, I, for one, am usually very slow to recognize when I'm stuck. I can be very stubborn, and I can make bad choices, and I trust my own flawed judgment and my own instincts before seeking God's will. Heck, when a minor celebrity known for making poor choices asks me to go rock climbing in a dream world, I say, yeah, sure, I'll go for it. Our stubbornness makes us slow to recognize and realize the obvious. And we insist that, I'm fine, I'm alive, long after death has taken hold. How can I know? How can I know if I am the walking dead? Well, Paul describes death here. Death looks like following the ways of the world rather than Jesus. Paul teaches that a symptom of being dead, stuck in our sin, is following the course of the world, following the prince of the power of the air. Why is it important that we do things Jesus' way rather than the world's way? Well, a lot of you know being a parent is one long, unique experience. And of course, one of the best parts of being a parent is that if we pay attention, if we watch carefully, I think our Heavenly Father gives us an insight into His character. Our oldest son, Calvin, sometimes goes over to friends' houses, and I don't know if you remember what it was like going over to a friend's house when you were growing up, but for me, it was always like a Xanadu. The food tasted better. The TV had better channels on it. Things were just better. And so now Calvin goes over to friends' houses, and he comes home with suggestions about things we should do in our house based upon what he has experienced at his friend's house. And when he makes these suggestions, I sometimes feel a tinge of jealousy, even some frustration. Now, things are far from perfect at the Lavren's house, but we have a way of doing things that is unique to our family, and we believe in it, and we believe that it is good for raising boys, for creating a home, and for honoring Jesus Christ. And so when Calvin comes home, he says, hey, Billy's family lets him have a TV in his room. Or hey, Joe's dad lets his kindergartner watch R-rated movies. Or, Sam's family doesn't pray before they eat, and it's so much more efficient. And we should do it too. Well, I don't like that. And I was surprised at how much I don't like it. Can you imagine how God feels, who is perfect and whose plan for us is perfect, when we look at other families besides his, and we don't even ask him if something is a good idea. We just adopt their habits and we adopt their practices, and we don't act anything like his adopted children? I think this bothers God, not because he is petty, but because he wants to bless us. He wants to bless us with this abundant life. And the surest way to do it is to follow Jesus rather than the world. Now, the second way we can know that if we're the walking dead is first that we live to satisfy ourselves and our own desires. Again, Paul wrote, we lived in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, and we were by nature children of wrath like the rest of mankind. Is there anything that makes anyone more miserable than selfishness or simply doing what fades our most base desires? On a smaller scale, there are times when I am really hungry and I will inevitably gorge on something. Fast food, a Big Mac and fries, steak nachos, deep dish pizza, and what happens? I don't feel better. I don't feel better when I gorge my appetites. I feel worse. But you know when I feel my absolute worst? I feel my absolute worst when I gorge my sinful appetites, the passions of my flesh, when I give in to wrath or jealousy or anger or gossip or strife or fear. That is when I really feel like I am the walking dead. Martin Luther King Jr. put it like this. He said, an individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic desires. So if we're really honest with ourselves, if we are really honest with ourselves, if we had the courage to examine our hearts, we will see that our tendency is to follow the ways of the world and to satisfy ourselves and our desires first. And when we see those habits and practices, we will also see that they make us the walking dead. Well, that's the bad news. That's the bad news. You didn't come here today for bad news. The great thing about Jesus is that Jesus never leaves us with just bad news. Here's the good news. Death, you see, death is not necessarily a terminal condition. If there is one message of Easter, it's just that. It's that we can wake up to the new life which God has created for us and he has intended for us to have since the beginning of all things. Ephesians 2, 4 through 7. But God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved, and raised him up with us and seated him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus, so that in the coming ages he might show the immeasurable riches of his grace in kindness toward us in Christ Jesus. Why are we here today? Why are we here today? Why are we playing golf or eating brunch? Why is this building here? Why didn't someone build a TGI Fridays here? That'd be nice, right? Why do some 2.1 billion people around the world call themselves Christians? We exist as Christians. We exist as the church. And we are here today and lots of other Sundays because we believe in a promise. The promise is that because God is rich in mercy and because of the great love with which he loves us, even when we are dead in our sin and trespasses, we have been made alive together with Jesus Christ. And not only have we been made alive, but there is this incredible future of blessings to look forward to in this life and in the coming ages. Immeasurable riches of grace. What is grace? What is grace? You know, I experienced grace this last Friday. I met a friend downtown for lunch, and I had to pay to park, and the cost was $2. It was only $2. And I pulled in, and I opened my wallet thinking I had a $5 bill, but I was dry. I was absolutely dry. And I couldn't pull out and back up because there were cars behind me, and I pulled up to the attendant, and I was going to tell him that I couldn't pay, and I was expecting a lecture and a scowl and a rolling of the eyes, hoping that in the best case, he would just let me turn around. He pulled $2 out of his pocket, smiled warmly, put them in the cash bag, and waved me through. Now, the funny part about this story is someone after 8:15 said, you know, Eric, you shouldn't repeat stories because you told that one 5 years ago. And no, I didn't. This has happened to me twice now, apparently, and I totally forgot about it. And I said, man, that's a great grace, that memory that you have. And he said, well, my wife doesn't think so. Well, that is grace. That is grace. When we can't pay, Jesus just joyfully waves us on through. But grace is about so much more than that. God promises so much more than to just deliver us out of this broken world. Jesus is gracefully remaking the whole world, redeeming and renewing and restoring all that is seen and unseen. Behold, he said, I am making all things new. John heard Jesus say this in a vision as he rode the throne of heaven, descending to the earth. The Bishop of Durham, a man by the name of N.T. Wright, puts it like this. He said, the story of Jesus of Nazareth offers itself as Jesus himself has offered his public work and words, his body and blood as answer to this multiple problem. The arrival of God's kingdom precisely in the world of space, time, and matter, the world of injustice and tyranny, of empire and crucifixions. This world is where the kingdom must come on earth as it is in heaven. So, let's take this outrageous claim seriously. The claim that not only is Jesus making our lives new, but he is filling our future with immeasurable riches of grace, and he is squashing, bringing to an end the world of injustice and tyranny and crucifixions and starvation and disease and war and poverty and persecution, and he is replacing it with his kingdom. How do we dare make such an outrageous, audacious, fantastical, incredible, improbable, implausible claim? What makes this anything more than just a beautiful dream, an inspired hope, a useful fiction, an opiate of the people? An empty tomb. Mark 16. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, dressed in a white robe, and they were alarmed. And they said to him, do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. What is really, really clear when you read the Bible and you study the church, the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, his empty tomb, was the keystone that held it all together. This event, more than Jesus' miracles, more than him healing thousands upon thousands, more than his teaching, more than his death on the cross, was the foundation for the early church. Nearly every sermon, nearly every discourse of the early church points back to this central claim: Jesus is alive. This was clear to them as Peter preached the first sermon in the church ever, delivered only a few hundred yards from where Jesus died, to thousands of men who would have known this story. Acts 2, verses 23 and 24. This Jesus, delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. God raised him up, loosing the pangs of death, because it was not possible for him to be held by it. It was clear to them that Jesus of Nazareth beat sin, he beat death, he beat the grave. Perfectly clear to them. This week, Nike released an ad featuring Tiger Woods. And everyone knows about Tiger's well-documented personal life and how that personal life cost him his marriage and much, much more. On a lesser note, his golf game for the last couple of years has been very pedestrian, very, very average, very, very un-Tiger-like. In the last few weeks, he's won a couple of tournaments, and he seemingly has marked a return to his old form, where once again, he's at the top of the world's golf rankings where he was previously for 5.5 years. Nike, upon Tiger's ascension, released this ad with the picture and the catchphrase, "Winning takes care of everything." Well, winning does take care of everything that has been defeated, that is. I won the 3rd grade science fair, but I didn't get into Harvard. It wasn't the Nobel Prize. The Royals had the best spring training record in baseball, but it's not the World Series. And sure, Tiger has won a tournament or two, and he's better at golf, and no one is more excited about this than his major sponsor. Because, well, now they can make some more money from him. But that's it. Winning really doesn't take care of everything. Winning at golf won't put anyone's personal life back together. Winning at golf won't help anyone in a healthy marriage. Winning at golf does not defeat those demons. Jesus' empty tomb means that he has defeated death. It means that he's defeated decay and sickness and disease and evil and sin, oppression and injustice and pain. In this case, because death has been defeated, it means Jesus really does take care of everything, and Jesus shares that overwhelming victory with us. Ephesians 2:8-9. For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. The claims keep becoming more and more outrageous. As amazing as the empty tomb is, as incredible as it is that the God of all the cosmos would confine himself to human flesh, as astounding as it is that Jesus, who knew no sin, would become sin for us, this is the part that we stumble over. This is the part that begs incredulity. That we are saved from death, from evil, from sin, from oppression, from injustice, from pain, not by anything we would do, not by our own works, but by God's grace alone. His free gift to all who simply believe. Believe. Now, nothing in this life is free, and to be sure, grace isn't free either. It costs God ever so much. But winning takes care of everything. And Jesus shares his overwhelming victory with all who believe. This is such good news. This is so astounding. This is so earth-shattering that it seems like a dream. It simply seems too good to be true. In one of my favorite movies, a character asks what I think is a very profound question. He asks, have you ever had a dream that you were so sure was real? What if you were unable to wake up from that dream? How would you know the difference between the dream world and the real world? Is the reality, is the real world that we can be good enough, that we can be talented enough, that we can be smart enough, that we can be gifted enough to somehow emerge the victor over against the trials, temptations, and snares of this life? Is the reality that somehow we can fill that deep void that we all feel with enough good works, approbations, achievements, and relationships to cease its aching? Is the reality that we can earn immortality? Or is that the fiction? Is that the dream from which we must all awake? You know, we've been studying Jonah for the last month or so, and Jonah ran from God, thinking that he could escape God's call in his life, and he fled in the exact opposite direction in which God was calling him, and he jumped a ship sailing west on the Mediterranean, and he thought he could get freedom from God. Well, we can't outrun God. We cannot outrun God. There's not a place that God will not go, even the cross, even the grave. So God sent a storm upon the waters. And as the waters churned, and as they foamed and threatened to send the ship and her crew to the depths of the sea, where was Jonah? Where was Jonah? He was dreaming. He was in the bow of the boat, fast asleep in the fallacy that we can outrun God. And the captain of the ship incredulously found him, and he said, "What do you mean, you sleeper? Arise, call out to your God." Do you ever have a dream that starts off promising and then suddenly goes bad? Have you ever had a day that starts off promising and suddenly goes bad? Have you ever had a year that starts off promising and suddenly goes bad? Are you having a life that starts off promisingly and suddenly goes bad? And you're stuck, and you can't go up, and you can't go back. What do? The captain of the ship is calling you, and he's telling you to wake up. He's more than a mere minor celebrity. He is a man whose birthday and whose resurrection is celebrated and remembered by the entire world. He is a man whose very name split history into what came before him and what comes after him. He is a man whose death split open rocks in Jerusalem and tore the curtain of the temple in two. He is not calling you to climb up, for he has already climbed down to you, and indeed, he will meet you right where you are right now. You just have to call out. You just have to call out, and he will wake you up. You just have to call out, and he will give you new life. You just have to call out, and he will shower you with incredible riches of mercy and his grace. You just have to call out, and he will raise you up to the heavenly places. You just have to call out, and he will share with you his victory. You just have to call the name that is above every name, the name at which every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that he is Lord. You just have to call the name of the one who was and is to come. You just have to call out the one of the name who is alive. Jesus. 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 He is no dream. But would you pray with us, please?